What if the one man who could destroy your life was also the only man who could save it? The iron beast hissed and groaned as it crawled into Riverbend Station on a cold October morning in 1889, steam rolling off its sides like breath from a wounded animal. Dust swirled around the platform, coating boots, skirts, and the faded station sign in a thin gray film. Eliza Parker pressed her forehead to the train window, her breath fogging the glass as she searched for a face she had never seen but had imagined 1,000 times. Passengers shuffled out around her. Men in worn leather coats, women whose skin was touched by years of sun and wind. But Eliza remained still, gripping her carpetbag with one hand and the worn photograph of Thomas Blackwell with the other. She had crossed nearly 2,000 miles from the Boston factory floor to this wild stretch of Montana. She had risked everything for the promise in his letters: a home, a husband, and a better life. "End of the line, miss," the conductor said softly, noticing her hesitation. Eliza rose, smoothing the navy wool dress she had saved 2 years to buy. It had been her best. Now it carried the dust of half the country. But she didn't care. She stepped off the train, boots clicking on the wooden boards as the Montana wind slapped her cheeks and filled her lungs with the sharp scent of sage, horses, and something else, a wildness she had never known. Mountains towered in the distance, already dusted white. Grassland stretched toward forever. The land felt too big, too untamed for someone like her. But she tried to stand straight. She had not come all this way to be small. The platform emptied quickly. Cowboys leaned against the station wall, eyeing her with lazy curiosity. An older woman barked orders at the men unloading her trunks. But no tall, dark-haired rancher stepped forward. No Thomas Blackwell. Instead, a man wearing a sheriff's star approached, removing his hat politely. He had kind eyes, sandy hair streaked with silver, and a voice gentle enough to break her heart. "You must be Miss Parker," he said. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm Sheriff Mason Hayes." He shifted uncomfortably. "Miss, I'm mighty sorry. I've got some hard news." Eliza's fingers tightened around her carpetbag. "What news?" "Thomas Blackwell passed away 5 days ago." His voice softened further. Fever took him quick. The world tilted. The mountains blurred. The wind roared in her ears. "No," she breathed, shaking her head. "No, that can't. There must be some kind of mistake. I received his last letter only 3 weeks ago." "I know, miss. He didn't leave word for you. His affairs weren't settled. There's confusion about his ranch, debts, family matters." Sheriff Hayes let the words fall gently. "I'm sorry, truly." Eliza swallowed hard, refusing to break in front of strangers. "Did he leave anything? Any message?" "Not that we found." The sheriff hesitated. "His brother Jacob's been gone 7 years. It's a tangle, Miss Parker. But Widow Collins runs a boarding house down the road. She'll give you a fair room until you decide your next steps." Next steps? As if she could simply rearrange her life again. As if she could return to the factory she had left behind. As if she had money for another journey. "Thank you," she managed, though her throat burned. Sheriff Hayes touched the brim of his hat and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the dust with $17 to her name, a bag of clothes, and a dead man's letters. The cowboys had lost interest. The older woman left. Even the train pulled away, taking with it the last piece of her old life. Eliza Parker drew a shaking breath and lifted her chin the way she always had, after long factory shifts when tears tried to come. The wind tugged her hair loose from its pins as she walked toward town. Riverbend was small, just a single dusty street lined with false-fronted buildings. The Methodist Church stood beside McCree's General Store. Across the road, the Buckhorn Saloon spilled piano music and rowdy laughter into the morning. At the far end sat Widow Collins' boarding house, a tired 2-story building with peeling paint but an air of stubborn pride. The widow herself opened the door, eyes sharp and assessing. "You'll be the mail-order bride," she said without a drop of gentleness. "Heard about Thomas. Shame. Come in, girl, before you freeze." The room she offered was small but clean, A narrow bed, a cracked basin, a window overlooking the endless, lonely prairie. It was more than Eliza had expected, and somehow less than she'd dreamed. "You'll need work," the widow said briskly. "This ain't Boston. No woman survives on pity here." Eliza nodded. She knew work. She had worked 16-hour days for years. She could work again. But when she finally sat on the bed, she pulled out Thomas's letters. Every one of them inked in careful handwriting, full of plans and promises. He had written of a life she could almost touch, a ranch waiting for her, a husband waiting for her, a future waiting for her, and now, all of it was gone. Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet and hot. She wiped them quickly. No one in this rough land would save her. If she was to survive, she would do it herself. At dawn, she put on her second-best dress and walked into town to find work. The general store turned her away. The hotel had no openings. The restaurant said she was too refined, while the saloon hinted at work she would never consider. By noon, defeat pressed on her shoulders like a weight. She stood outside the church, gathering courage to ask about charity, when shouting erupted from the Buckhorn saloon. A man stumbled out, fists raised. Another followed. "You got no right coming back here, Blackwell!" One shouted. Eliza's heart stopped. Blackwell, could it be? Then she saw him. Tall, lean, dark hair needing a cut, clothes worn from long miles, a hard jaw, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of winter sky. He did not look like Thomas's photograph, but he did look like trouble. "I've got every right," he said quietly, but his voice carried like thunder. Sheriff Hayes shoved between them. "Jacob Blackwell, my office, now." Jacob Blackwell, Thomas's estranged brother, and the man whose eyes locked onto Eliza's for the briefest heartbeat. Curious, assessing, unsettling. She felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Whatever storms the Wild West held, one of them had just found her. What if the only man who could protect you was the same man everyone warned you to fear? Eliza stood frozen in the dusty street as Jacob Blackwell disappeared into the sheriff's office. The town murmured around her like restless wind, people whispering, glancing her way, then looking quickly aside. In a single morning she had become a curiosity, a question mark, a story waiting to be picked apart, the mail-order bride with no groom. The woman left stranded in a place where winter, men, and fate were all equally unforgiving. She forced herself to move. Standing still in Riverbend was as good as an invitation to be stepped on. Widow Collins's warning rang in her ears. A woman alone out here is something folks either pity or try to use. Eliza would allow neither. She headed to the Buckhorn Saloon, not as a customer, but as a worker. Cooking was honest work. It did not require her dignity as payment. The saloon owner, Sam Turner, took one look at her and grunted, "We need a cook." Lunch crowd's rough but hungry. Pay ain't much, but it's better than starving. She accepted before fear could talk her out of it. By noon, the saloon was full of miners, ranch hands, and drifters. Boots stomped across the floorboards. Voices hollered. Laughter erupted in waves. Eliza worked the kitchen like she had once worked a Boston factory line, steady, quick, and determined. The air was hot, the pans heavy, but she found comfort in the rhythm of the work, until she heard a voice she already recognized. "That stew as good as they say, Sam?" Jacob Blackwell asked. Her heart jolted. She turned, slowly, to find him standing at the serving window. His dark hair fell in unruly waves. His jaw was shadowed with stubble, and his eyes, they didn't look like Thomas's at all. They looked like someone who had lived hard, fought harder, and trusted no one. "Hungry?" she asked coolly. He didn't smile. "Hungry enough." He paid with a quarter and pushed the bowl away slightly. "Keep the change," he said. "And Miss Parker." She stiffened. "You shouldn't be in a place like this alone." "Eliza," she corrected sharply. "And I'm not alone. I'm working." His eyes narrowed, not with judgment, with calculation, like a man trying to solve a riddle. "You're tougher than you look," Jacob said. "I know," she replied. He left without another word, but she felt his gaze long after he was gone. When the lunch crowd faded, Eliza stepped outside to catch her breath. The crisp Montana air helped cool her flushed cheeks. She didn't realize someone had followed her until she heard a slurred voice behind her. "Well, ain't you a pretty little thing?" a cowboy sneered, breath thick with whiskey. "Heard your groom's dead. Shame. Some of us would take real good care of you." Eliza backed up, heart pounding. "Leave me alone." He reached for her sleeve. And suddenly he wasn't reaching anymore. He was on the ground, clutching his wrist, while Jacob Blackwell stood over him, jaw tight, eyes cold. "You so much as breathe her air again," Jacob said, "and you'll wish Tom had taught you manners instead of me." The cowboy scrambled away. Eliza stared at Jacob, breath shaky. "You didn't have to do that." Quote, "Yes," Jacob said quietly, "I did." Before she could speak, Sheriff Hayes emerged from the saloon. "Jacob," he warned, "you keep breaking wrists, we'll need a whole new jail." "He earned it," Jacob muttered. The sheriff gave Eliza a sympathetic glance. "Miss Parker, you all right?" "I'm fine," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure she believed it. Jacob's gaze swept her face, lingering on her pale cheeks. "Walk back with you?" he asked, voice low, but she shook her head. "No, thank you, but no." His jaw flexed, hurt maybe, but he didn't argue. He tipped his hat and walked away, boots crunching in the dust. That evening, the boarding house buzzed with gossip. Everyone wanted to know about Jacob's return, about Thomas's death, about Eliza's place in all of this. Miss Prudence, the schoolteacher, said loudly, "She came here expecting a husband. Now she's working in a saloon. Hardly respectable." "Better respectable work than marrying a corpse," Mr. Davidson added. Faces turned toward Eliza. She lifted her chin. "I came here for a life. I intend to make one." Quote, whispers followed her, soft but biting. Upstairs, she tried to read Thomas's letters again, searching for comfort, but sadness kept blurring the lines. She had come for security. Instead, she found herself on uncertain ground, with townsfolk watching her like a hawk, and danger around every corner. And then came the knock. Jacob stood in the hallway, hat in hand, looking strangely unsure of himself. "Evenin', Eliza," he said quietly. Her heart thumped, traitorous and warm. "What do you want, Jacob?" "To talk," he said. "About Tom, about you, about all of this." Eliza hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered the small room with surprising gentleness for someone built like a storm. "I went through Tom's things at the ranch," Jacob began slowly. "Found letters. Found your name." Eliza's breath hitched. And he meant it, Jacob said, every word. He was ready for you. He wanted a life with you. His voice softened. He would have taken good care of you. Her eyes stung. "I know." Quote, Jacob stepped closer, not enough to frighten her, but enough for her to feel the warmth of him. "Eliza, I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner. If I had come back when Tom first asked," he exhaled sharply, "things might have been different." She saw the guilt in him, the weight he carried, the shadows. "You can't rewrite the past," she whispered. "None of us can." His eyes lifted to hers, blue and unguarded. "You're not safe here, Eliza, not alone. Tom had enemies. And now you're in the middle of something you don't understand." She swallowed. "And you're warning me out of the goodness of your heart?" "No," Jacob said, voice rough. "Not goodness. Something else." Her breath caught. Before she could ask what he meant, a fist pounded on the boarding house door downstairs. Sheriff Hayes shouted urgently, "Eliza! Jacob! You'd better come quick!" They rushed down the stairs. The sheriff pointed toward the street where men were gathered, shouting, faces twisted with anger. "Eliza," he said grimly, "someone just filed a claim saying you were trying to steal the Blackwell ranch." Quote, her stomach dropped. "Steal? I haven't even set foot on the property." "Doesn't matter," Hayes said. "They're stirring folks up, saying Tom never meant for you to inherit anything, saying you tricked him." Jacob's expression darkened like a storm cloud. "Eliza," he said quietly, "this is only the beginning." She looked at him, at his strength, his fury, his unexpected loyalty, and felt the ground shift beneath her feet again. Some storm was coming. And she suddenly knew there was only one person who would stand between her and the worst of it: Jacob Blackwell. What if the only way to survive the West was to stand beside the one man you never meant to love? The night sky over Riverbend glowed faintly red from the torches of the angry men gathered in the street. Their shouts echoed off the false-fronted buildings, swelling like a rising tide. Eliza stood on the boarding house porch, her hands trembling against her skirt. Sheriff Hayes tried to calm the crowd, but his voice barely rose over the accusations. "She tricked Thomas! She wants the ranch for herself!" Quote, "A woman alone can't run a Blackwell property. Send her back east before Jacob kills us all." Each lie hit Eliza like a thrown stone. Jacob stepped closer, placing himself between her and the mob. His voice was quiet, but fierce. "You stay behind me." She swallowed hard. "Jacob, I didn't come here to cause trouble." "I know." His gaze stayed forward, jaw tight. But trouble came anyway. A bottle smashed against a nearby wall, and Sheriff Hayes stormed toward Jacob. "Get her out of here," Hayes ordered. "Now, before this turns ugly." "It already has," Jacob growled. Without another word, he guided Eliza through the back door of the boarding house. They cut through the narrow alley until the noise faded enough for her to breathe. Only then did Jacob turn to her. The lamplight caught the hard angle of his jaw, the storm in his eyes. "Eliza, listen carefully," he said. "Someone stirred up that crowd on purpose. Someone who wants the ranch. Someone who wants you gone." Her voice shook. Gone, meaning driven out, or worse. He didn't soften it. Jacob never softened anything. Tom had enemies. Now they see you as the weakest link. She shivered. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're not weak, but you are alone here, except for me." Those last words hit her all at once. Sharp, warm, dangerous. "Jacob," she whispered, "why are you helping me?" His breath left him in a visible cloud. "Because Tom would want me to." But something in his voice said there was more, much more. The next morning, Eliza stood at the window of her tiny boarding house room. Riverbend was tense. She could feel it in the stillness of the street, the way people watched her with suspicion or pity. She no longer felt safe. When she stepped downstairs, Jacob was already waiting for her, arms crossed, hat low over his eyes. "We're going to the ranch," he said, "today." She blinked. "What?" "Jacob, I can't just claim." "Yes, you can. Tom owned that ranch, and you're the woman he sent for. People will listen differently once you're standing on Blackwell land." "I shouldn't go alone," she murmured. "You're not," he said simply. And somehow that changed everything. The ride out to the Blackwell ranch felt like crossing into another world. The land stretched wide and wild. Snow dusted the distant peaks. The wind carried the smell of sage and winter. But when the ranch came into view, a long porch, a big barn, a lifetime of work, it felt like stepping into the echo of a life she almost had. Jacob dismounted first, then offered her his hand. She hesitated, then took it. Warm, solid, steady. "This place," he said quietly, "was Tom's heart." "And now?" she asked. He met her eyes, searching them. "Now it's yours." She swallowed a sudden lump in her throat. "I don't know the first thing about ranching." "You'll learn," he said. "I'll teach you." Something in her chest loosened, a knot of fear she hadn't realized she was carrying. Jacob led her inside the ranch house. Dust motes danced in the sunlight. Every chair, every book, every coat on the hook told her who Thomas had been. Kind, organized, hopeful, everything Jacob wasn't. And yet, when she turned, Jacob stood in the doorway, hat in hand, looking at the home he hadn't stepped inside for 7 years. "Jacob," she whispered, "are you all right?" "No," he said, "but I will be." For the first time since she'd met him, there was no hardness in his face, just a man trying to make peace with ghosts. They spent the next hours exploring the house, the barn, the land. Jacob showed her everything with surprising gentleness: how to close the barn latch so it didn't freeze, where Tom kept the feed, which fence posts needed repair. But after a while his voice became quieter, more distant, until finally he stopped at the fence overlooking the west pasture. "Eliza," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." The air stilled. She stepped closer. "What is it?" Quote. He met her eyes, blue, stormy, tired. "I wasn't here when Tom needed me. I wasn't here when he sent for me. I wasn't here when he died. I failed him over and over." Her heart squeezed. "Jacob." "No," he said. "Let me finish." She waited. He took a slow breath. "The night before he died, Tom sent me a letter." "A letter?" Jacob nodded. "He told me he'd met a woman, that she was strong, worthy, and that if anything happened to him," his throat worked, "he wanted me to look after her." Eliza trembled. "Jacob." "I thought I had time," he whispered. "I thought I could fix things later. But I was too late." His chest rose and fell shakily. "I failed him, Eliza, but I won't fail you." Something inside her broke, not in pain, but in a sudden, overwhelming softness. "Jacob," she whispered, "you haven't failed me at all." He looked away. "You don't know what I've done." "I know what you're doing now," she said. "And that's what matters." The wind swept between them, tugging at her hair. He took a single step closer. "Eliza," he said, voiced low, "there's something else." Her breath tangled. Then he said the words that left her world spinning. "I care about you." She froze, not because she didn't feel it, but because she did, deeply, dangerously, irrevocably. "Jacob." He looked at her with an expression so raw it hurt. "You're not mine. You were never meant to be mine. But the way you fight, the way you stand your ground, the way you walked into this land and didn't break." He swallowed hard. "God help me, Eliza, I've fallen for you." The world seemed to hold its breath. Eliza stepped toward him, slow, steady. "Jacob," she whispered, "look at me." He did. She reached up, her fingers brushing his jaw rough with stubble. "You didn't steal me from Thomas," she said softly. "Life brought me here, and you kept me alive." His breath hitched. "Eliza." She didn't let him speak, not this time. She rose on her toes, touched her forehead to his, and whispered, "You're not my mistake, Jacob Blackwell. You're my wildest ride." He made a sound, half groan, half prayer, and then his hands came to her waist, drawing her into him with a need that shook them both. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She'd crossed a continent for a dream that died before she arrived. But she stayed for the man who was alive right in front of her. His lips brushed hers, slow, unsure, reverent, before deepening into a kiss that tasted like everything the West promised. Freedom, fire, a second chance at life. When they finally pulled apart, Jacob rested his forehead against hers. "Eliza," he whispered, voice trembling, "Darlin, you're my wildest ride." Her heart soared. Because, for the first time since she stepped off that train, she believed it. She belonged. And this man, this stubborn, haunted, fiercely loyal man, belonged with her. Together they turned toward the ranch house, toward a future neither of them planned, but both of them wanted. A future built not on letters or promises, but on fire, and choice, and love.